And welcome back to another Inside Texas live show. It's my Christmas show. That's what we're gonna call this. Welcoming Pack back on the channel. We're here to talk some more Will Muschamp and the Texas defense, what that might look like on the field in 2026. But first, guys, right on over to InsideTexas.com. You know, we're still running that flash sale, $1 for the best recruiting scoop, in-depth analysis on this football team, what they look like on the field, all types of portal news, coaching news, obviously, and much more over on Inside Texas. So go join us and be a part of our community for just $1 right now today. Hop on over there, guys. But back to the show. Got my man Pack with me. Pack, how you doing? Back home for some Christmas break?
Yeah, made a plane ride a few days ago. Got back home, so excited to be back on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I hope you have safe travels on the rest of your Christmas break. Obviously, a great Christmas. The same for all of you guys. But let's talk Will Muschamp. Let's talk about this Texas defense. No better guy to have on the show than Pack, as he is great at breaking down defenses and really great at breaking down saving defenses, as some of you guys witnessed this all last week on our Thursday show. But all right, Pack, let's get into a little bit more. When you look at this Will Muschamp defense, and we talked about some of the differences between PK and Will Muschamp, and again, grateful for the work that PK did on the field, but there are some very big and noticeable differences with Will Muschamp. But I want to talk to you about early downs, okay? First and second down here, before we get to the money downs. Is Texas going to see, will we see a lot more aggression on first and second down? And then what are kind of some of the standard looks and standard fronts that you're going to see out of Will Muschamp, or is it based on opponent and week-to-week matchups?
Yeah, so in terms of the aggression, I think it kind of depends on the opponent and also the personnel, right? That's going to be an answer for a lot of these questions, and I don't mean for it to be a cop-out. That's just kind of the way it is, right? As an example, Georgia against Alabama on second down ran a lot of 5-man pressures, and they ran a lot of 6-man pressures. But again, earlier in the year against a team like Ole Miss or a team like Florida, it was a lot more 4-man pressures, a lot more simulated stuff on first and second down. So it really does depend. It is a pretty game plan opponent thing in terms of what you're going to see on first and second down, whether it's more aggressive or conservative. A lot of it's dependent on what a team does in terms of from a tendency perspective, right? So if you're, as an example, in terms of how you're game planning, right, on first and second down, especially on first down, you're looking for the run pass split, right? You're trying to see what's their main run concepts. Are they zone heavy? Are they gap scheme heavy? What personnel groupings do they do it out of? Are they RPO heavy? Because that'll influence the fronts you run. It'll influence what coverages you run, right? If you see a team that runs a lot of RPO bubble game and they run a lot of inside zone, well, then I'm probably going to play mint and I'm going to play mod and keep my overhang out of the fit and allow him to take care of the RPO conflict on that bubble, right? Where if it's a team that runs a lot of RPO slant stuff, well, then I'm going to want to play some form of 3 buzz and be able to take away the slant in the RPO game there. So it'll depend. It'll depend a lot on what a team wants to do, why a team does what they do, and that'll influence what they do on first and second down. In terms of fronts, you'll see a bunch of different stuff. Most of it stems out of even fronts. So you'll see them set the tight or the 3 technique and the 5 technique to a side, whether that's to the back, to the field, to the star. A lot of that depends on what they're running on the back end. If they're playing some form of quarters, most likely you're going to see it set to the star or the tight end. If they're running some form of cover 3, it really doesn't matter because you have another fitter that you're going to have from the star or from the safety that's rolling down. So you'll see a lot of different fronts. You can expect to see mint just because of the way that it handles the RPO and zone game. Now, I think you're going to see more 4 down than what Georgia runs, just because even if you go watch Saban in 2023 and Saban in 2022, or you watch Lanning in Oregon, those guys, they run a lot more 4 down than they do mint. Mint is something that Georgia really, really likes. That's a Smart and Schumann deal. You'll see Texas run 3 down. You'll see them run mint, but I would still expect to see a decent amount of 4 down. In terms of what 4 down fronts you're going to get, again, pretty dependent on the back. It's dependent on the Y a lot too, where if a team runs a lot of gap scheme, a lot of counter, you'll see a lot more under fronts in order to be able to dig out those pullers. If it's a team that runs a lot of zone cut where The Y is just down blocking. You're going to see a lot more over fronts in order to
Mhm.
force the ball to work backside. So it'll depend a lot. A lot of the times it is actually dependent off the Y and the running back. So you'd expect to see a lot of four down, see mint, and a lot of it will fluctuate game to game where you may not know what split you're going to get from if they're running mod 60% of the time or if they're going to run four down 60% of the time. It'll fluctuate pretty heavily.
Well said, brother. And again, you referenced mint there a couple of different times. If there's anybody watching this in the comments and you want us to go through and have Pack explain mint again, like he did last week, and what a mint front looks like, he did so eloquently last week, and we're happy to do so again. But one thing, and I want to say, hey, Dustin, appreciate you commenting here. It's great to meet you the other night, meeting an IT fan out in the wild for the first time. But no, let's talk about quarters. It's a very popular terminology in college football at the moment. It has been for half a decade or more now. Walk us through quarters, brother, and what that looks like, just for the folks that may not know and are willing to learn.
Yeah, so quarters is what some people call cover four. It's a 4 deep, 3 under zone. So you have a quarter flat player. So he's taking, if you want to think about it from the field, he's basically got the hash all the way to the sideline. And then you've got a strong hook defender. So that's about from the middle of the field to about the numbers, give or
Mm-hmm.
take 5 yards. And then you've got a normal flat player. So those are your three underneath defenders, right? In terms of cover three, there's a flat player, there's a hook curl player, there's a hook curl player, another flat player. Now think of one of those four players. He's now a deep quarter player. So he's, in terms of anything beyond 15 yards, he's now playing a deep quarter of the field. So now that's someone that has to expand in terms of their zone. So now they're not just playing the flat. They're not just playing the hook curl. They're now ranging from the curl to the flat. And that's what we call the quarter flat. So it's just a 4 deep zone. And then why people call it quarters is because cover four, when it's said in terms of coaching circles, cover four typically means just true zone quarters where everyone's playing with vision off the quarterback. There's no, in terms of what you're getting from safeties, quarters, when you say that, is inherently match based coverage. The safeties are reading route distributions, they're reading the number two receiver to the number one receiver. The corner, depending on what coverage they're in, they're either reading the one or they're reading the two, right? So quarters inherently is a match version of cover four, whereas cover
Mm-hmm.
four is what, if you were on Madden, right, where everyone just drops to a spot and there's no route matching, that's what cover four is. Whereas quarters is the match version of that. And that's what you see pretty much everyone across football run. You don't really see it on a true cover four.
It's really well said. I mean, it basically breaks down into man coverage underneath all those deep zones. Match is a huge part of modern defense. What do you think about Will Muschamp and his ability to, obviously, he had some great defense with Texas, 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. You have a top 10 total unit in defense, and then you have the number one unit in sacks in one season. But that's almost 20 years ago. How do you feel about Will Muschamp and his ability to, just adapt to modern offenses, the RPOs of the world, and what these offenses and coordinators on the headsets can throw at you?
Yeah, so I think the first part is you got to acknowledge that offenses are a lot different, right? Um, yeah, right. Like spot drop and country, because those are the same thing. There's no difference between what country, area, spot drop, all the same thing. And then later on, we can get into the differences between the different types of match because that doesn't mean one thing. There's two different types of match coverages. But to go back to your question, so in 2009, when you got to look at personnel groupings, right? Wide receivers back then were running 4 7s, 4 6s. Tight ends were running 4 8s, 4 9s. And now tight ends run 4 5s and receivers run 4 3s, and everyone's become a lot quicker. The games become
Mm-hmm.
more spread. RPOs were not a thing in 2009. They're a big part of a lot of offenses today. So that'll influence a lot of the adaptation that defensive coordinators have had to go through. If you look at the body type of linebackers then versus now, you'll see a pretty drastic difference. You'll see that guys were about 245 in 2009, and you had a traditional Sam, Will, and Mike all about 245. And then you've got now linebackers are 230. They can range all the way from 210 to 235. And unless you're Ohio State, that's pretty much the range you're going to be in. So, one, the game's become a lot quicker. So you can't do the same stuff that you did back then where you saw Will Muschamp at Texas. It was a lot of 4-down cover one, and it was really a lot of over cover one. Now, when you look at a lot of and that's a lot of what Saban teams did back then too. They were a lot of middle field closed, play 4-down. And now if you go watch, and you even go watch Oregon, or you watch Ole Miss, or you watch Georgia, you're going to see there's a difference in terms of what they're running and how they're running stuff. You're going to see a lot more mints. You're going to see the linebackers fit a little bit differently, where back in the old day, it was a lot of plugging gaps. It was a lot of play downhill in a hurry. Now you're going to see people play a lot more patiently, and part of that is the RPO game. Because if you're plugging gaps and you're plugging linebackers immediately, there's spaces behind you. There's voids behind you for teams to run the RPO hitch route, the RPO stick route, the RPO slant, the RPO glance game. So that is that's caused defenses to have to adapt. And that's where you see stuff like the mint front. That's where you see stuff like heads. It's where you see a lot of the different stunts and different games. Teams will work up front in order to play different coverages. That's why you've seen split safety become a lot more popular, because split safety is a really good way to deal with the RPO game, because you can leave your overhang in coverage and you can play tight off of that and eliminate keep reads for quarterbacks and give the ball off to a running back and allow your front six to fit the run. So you'll see some adaptation there. You're not going to see a lot of over cover one. If you did, I think you should be pretty concerned if you're Texas, because that'll be 16 years. And there's not a team in the country who does that outside of Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's got specific athletes for it, and they also don't play in the SEC. If you go watch teams in the SEC, they all do something fairly similar. If they're going to play cover one, they're not just doing it from an over front. And a lot of the times they're blitzing, or they're doing different things to mess with timing, to mess with protections, to take away the RPO game. And then they're playing cover three, or they're playing cover two to complement that. Or you're seeing what Georgia does, which is they'll play mint, they'll play split safety, they'll run quarters, they'll run two-man, they'll run cover one, they'll run cover three, and they're diverse in terms of what they're running. But they've also got the ability to then pressure and do all these different things. And that's what I think you're going to see more from Texas. I think you're going to see a lot of 3-down, you're going to see a lot of 4-down, and you're going to see much more of what you've seen from Georgia in recent years than you are going to see what Muschamp was running at Florida, or what he was running at South Carolina or Auburn, because the game just has changed a lot since then. And it's an adapt or die world in football, right? You hear that all the time. You adapt or you die. And you have to adapt in the SEC. And I think Muschamp knows that, just from what I've seen at Georgia and what I know and what I've talked about with them. I think you'll see some adaptation from him for sure.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing, man. I don't think Texas makes this higher, or that conversations get very far if you're talking about running out schemes that you ran 16, 17 years ago and not doing modernized things on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to take our first sponsor break of the night. When we come back, we talked a little quarters. We talked mint last week, and we'll go ahead and walk through split safety and what exactly that means. But first, let's hear a word from our sponsor, David McClellan.
Big financial decisions don't have to feel overwhelming. There's someone who can guide you every step of the way. David McClellan is a fiduciary financial advisor with Forum Financial, and he's working closely with his clients as a true financial life coach, guiding every aspect of your financial journey with expertise and care. If his name sounds familiar, that's because David was a swimmer at Texas and a member of several national championship teams. Today, he channels that same championship mindset into helping people win with their finances. David specializes in financial planning, and he's contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. And right now, David is offering viewers a free intro consultation to assess your financial situation. Do not miss this chance to get personalized guidance from a trusted expert. To schedule your free consult, email David at dmcclellan@forumfinancial.com, or you can call him directly at 312-933-8823. The contact info is in the description.
All right, guys, let's keep it going. If y'all don't mind, throw a quick like on the video for my guy Pat. Go share it with a friend as we continue to dive into Will Muschamp and what this defense for Texas is likely to look like in 2026. All right, Pat, split safety. You know, when you say it out loud, sounds pretty simple. When you kind of dive into the concept, you know, you've got your safety split to defend halves of the field, but it gets a little bit deeper than that. So walk us through split safety and how Will Muschamp and Texas might use it down the line.
Yeah, so split safety is the idea that you run different coverages to each side of the field. So maybe to one side you're running, and this is a very simplified version, and we can get a little bit deeper into it in here just a second. But say you're running cover one to one side where you're playing true man-to-man coverage, and on the other side you're running some form of zone coverage. It's the
Mhm.
idea that you're really splitting the field in half in terms of to one side of the field, you're running one coverage, to the other side of the field, you're running another coverage. For Georgia, a lot of the times, or for the Saban system, a lot of the times, when we're saying split safety, it's going to be we're running some form of quarters to one side, and then we're going to run some form of cover zero or cover two to the other side, depending on what we're running to the quarter side.
Absolutely. And obviously in a coverage like this, you know, you're going to have a nickel or a star, you know, that can really hold up and do their own in this defense. Do you see anybody on the roster for Texas like that in 2026?
Yeah, to me, I think Wardell Mack makes a lot of sense in terms of this role. Um, so really what you need to understand about the nickel for this defense is their primary responsibility is actually in terms of what they do in the run game. Because on base downs, on first and second down, a lot of the times they don't have vertical carries. They don't have vertical responsibilities where they're not going to match too deep and out a lot of the time. They'll have too shallow or they'll have too in or out, but they're what are known as action to coverage players, meaning they read run pass, and on run they're in the fit, in pass they're out of the fit. So what you need to understand is in terms of what the nickel is it's someone whose first responsibility is the run game. So you really want someone who is good in terms of he can take on blocks, he's physical, he's a good tackler, he's good in the run game. So to me, I think of Wardell Mack when I think of that. I think he's got a good build for it. And then Jelani McDonald is actually a name that I really like in terms of star. If you go look at what George is doing right now with Jonel Aguero, a lot of those things I think match what Jelani McDonald can do. And even what he did last year in terms of when he was playing as a big nickel, I think that's something that I would think about if I was Texas. I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of his ability to be involved in the run game, his ability to fit the run, his ability to force the ball back inside, because that is a lot of what the star has to do, and his ability to make plays in space. So to me, Jelani McDonald and Wardell Mack are actually the first two names that came to mind.
Well said, man. And again, it seems like Wardell could end up being a pretty big benefactor from not only staying with the team, but also, you know, the coaching change and having Will Muschamp, and then we'll see who ends up being, you know, part of the secondary coaching staff. But I feel like it's going to be a big win there when a name is eventually announced. Again, you're doing a great job, Pat, walking us through all these things. Let's continue to do more and more of that. Walk us through maybe what your personal opinion, in which you've seen it out of Georgia. You know you're familiar with his time at or Muschamp's time in Florida. What do you think is his favorite pressure package, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's actually my favorite pressure package too, and that's two trap, two steal, and two roll concepts. So what two steal is so you show two high, and so let's say there's just close your eyes. Imagine that there's three guys to the field. So what steal means is the boundary safety is going to poach, or he's going to work to the middle of the field to take three. So if three
Okay.
were to run a go route or a seam route, the boundary safety is going to play him. If three is running a drag route, the boundary safety has him and he's going to play top down on that. So essentially what it is it's taking someone from across the field to cover someone on the other side of the field. And a lot of the times it's someone on the inside. Two roll is very similar to that, where you're taking a boundary safety and you're taking him from being a deep half in the boundary and rolling him to be a field half player. So just think of it as you're just basically spinning.
Yeah.
And then Two trap is your corners are playing aggressive in the flats. So traditionally, what you see in cover two is guys play what's known as a sink, or they play a squat, or they play what's known as a sail technique, where they play everything top down. And you do that in order to eliminate the hole shot. Because
Well, real quick, talk to us about a cell technique. What
yeah,
exactly is that, brother?
so a sail technique is when, if you're a corner, it's when you flip your butt to the sideline. So your hips are pointing to the opposite sideline and you work out of a shuffle. So what you're doing, what that allows you to do is it allows you to see all of the field in front of you, right? So you can see two or three and you can see if they're running a deep out. So that way you know to leverage that. But it also gives you the ability to see anything that's underneath you. It allows you to see the shallow, it allows you to see the arrow route, it allows you to see a 5 yard out. So what it is, all it is it's you turning your sideline, it's you turning your hips to the opposite sidelines. That way you are able to see the quarterback and you can see everyone else on the field. So that's the sail technique, and that's what you see traditionally out of cover two, because the weakness of cover two is that hole shot. It's the area between the flat and the deep half safety, and you've got to protect against that. So they'll play it top down. A trap corner is doing the opposite. On anything that's shallow and to the flat, they'll drive on it immediately. And this is actually what you saw, if you remember last year when Georgia played Texas in Austin. Dalen Everett got an interception where he was trapping the flat. And you can see how that works, where he's immediately playing down to the flat. It's an aggressive technique. You're doing it for the purpose of creating turnovers. So that's what two trap is. As I said, two steal is, think of it as you working someone from across the field to take someone on the inside, and then two roll is just spinning. So those are his favorite coverages. Those are his favorite pressure pass. And in terms of what he's bringing, it's pretty much everyone. He'll send linebackers, he'll send safeties, he'll send the nickel, he'll run stunts inside. And that's what makes the path that's what makes the concept so versatile, is you can do so many different things in terms of pressure paths, and you can be fairly disciplined and you can be fairly safe in terms of the coverage, where you're not creating a coverage that has a lot of holes. You're not creating a coverage that's unsound. You're allowing yourself to be tight in coverage. You're allowing yourself to have good rules, and you're allowing yourself to be able to take away routes while also getting the pressure pass that you want.
Really well said, man. How would a cell technique maybe differ from a creep technique or a lag technique?
So in terms of a creep technique, in general, you're not really flipping your hips. It's a lot more of you working to a 45, right? It's
Okay.
you kind of, from a creep technique perspective, it's a lot of, you're starting as a cover two corner. So you're not immediately opening and turning. You're trying to get a jam in there, whether that's a one arm or a two arm, where if someone enters your backside or someone enters outside of you, you're looking to widen it out. You're trying to get them, you're basically trying to bleacher them. That's what
Mhm.
I know as a creep technique. And then a lag technique, not super familiar with. I know that for the defensive line. Couldn't tell you what it is for corner. If it's something else if it has a different name, I probably know what it is. But so that's how I
That's
know a
not
creep technique. A shuffle is more, not a shuffle. A sail is more what happens in the route type of thing, where it's not an immediate. It's not an immediate response. You're not immediately
right.
opening your hips and getting into a sail. It's a response to something that you see. Where if one goes on an under route, then you'll turn into a sail technique. Or if you see two on an out, then you work to a sail technique. It's a little bit more. You don't start in a sail. You adjust to a sail. Is kind of how I would describe the difference between a creep and a sail.
Perfect, man. I love it. Thanks for educating all of us, my man. I do have to say, the more you talk about traps, all I keep doing is thinking about back to Friday night and John Mateer there with about a minute left in the first half. And wow, I don't know exactly what coverage that was that Alabama ran right there, but obviously they trapped him here into a touchdown. So I had to bring that up again. Were you surprised at all to
That's actually
see
a
there was?
coverage. That's actually a
Go ahead.
coverage that Muschamp runs. It's called thumbs. So thumbs is where the safety, really you start it from depth, but all you're doing is the person that's underneath or the person that's closer to the line of scrimmage he works out and he becomes a deep half player. And the player that's deeper of the two, he now becomes the flat defender. It's basically an inverted 2 concept.
Right.
So
Which
it's
you
pretty
saw.
similar to what you see.
I would say you saw that defender back up. The man that became the deep half player, and then obviously you saw the corner sneak up in the flat right there. But yeah, continue, brother.
Yeah, so that's one of the 2 ways you can play it. There's also what's known as a slice technique. So that's where the jack or person off the edge, he drops into the flat, and then the corner will end up sinking to a deep half player. You see this a lot when Georgia runs their Tampa 2 simulated pressures, where one of the corners is going to end up becoming a deep half. Most of the time it's into the boundary, where they drop the boundary edge or the jack into the flat, and then the corner ends up becoming a deep half player. You'll see that a lot when Texas gets into third down. You'll see a lot of slice concepts into the boundary when they want to run Tampa 2.
All right. Well, I mean, I've got to say, yeah, making fun of. So hey, shout out at my 94-year-old great grandmother's house. Rocking whatever lighting we could find. But it's been a weird week for lighting, man. Traveling for work, traveling for Christmas. But thanks for noticing, my man. Appreciate you being here, Joshy. We got a question from Mr. Robert right here. Sorry, late to the podcast. Better late than never, my man. We're glad you're here. How does Nansen fit into the screen? Do you have an answer to that?
Is this Nansen as in?
That's what I'm thinking he's probably saying, unless there's somebody that I'm missing out there. But I would assume it's Nansen.
Yeah, so I'm not super familiar with Nansen's background in terms of where he was before Arizona, but in terms of what he did at Texas, it wasn't a whole lot of things that are going to be super replicable in terms of there's not a whole lot of continuity in terms of what he did last year and what you're going to see this year. In terms of the way that they fit the run, Texas was a lot more aggressive in terms of their footwork. They were playing more one gap stuff where they would get their feet in the gap and then they would fit based off of that. Whereas Georgia and what Texas will do next year is it's a lot more of a patient run fit where it's you work laterally before you work vertically. You're trying to stack a gap. You're trying to free up double teams for your defensive line, and you're trying to do it in a way that allows you to also fit off the back. That's not really what Texas was this year. There's not a whole lot of continuity in terms of what Nansen taught this year and what you would probably ask him to teach next year.
Do you think that's something that, obviously we talked about how deep the playbook is. It's a completely different style of defense. Do you think that it is something that Nansen could pick up on the fly and they could really dive into? You thinking that might be just a better fit out there for Will Muschamp?
Yeah, I do think there would be a better fit, but I also don't know if Nansen knows how to teach a stack fit, if he's comfortable with it. You can make it work. To me, I think it makes a lot more sense to have someone that knows the system and is comfortable with a stack fit and understands what that is in order to teach them, rather than doing it in the inverse and hoping Nansen knows how to do it or teaching him how to stack fit.
Yeah, well said there. And that's nothing against Coach Nansen. It's just that, hey, staffs are all different. And having a guy that, has a background in that system or has familiarity with the DC or familiarity with the DC, that all matters to these guys. And so definitely curious to see kind of what happens there. And KJ, we're going to get to your question on field boundary safeties in 1 second, my man. But we're going to go ahead and get to our second sponsor break of the night. Let's hear a word from Luxe Kitchen and Bath.
Are you ready to love your kitchen and bathroom again? Luxe Kitchen and Bath will bring that to life. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring your dream vision to life. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team also provides full home remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today, or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get your free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE, or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Contact info is in the description.
Need a new bathroom pack when you come back to Austin. Maybe they'll hook you up and they'll have you the whole setup as well as you're explaining this defense. All right, Mr. KJ, we got you right here. Do they typically have field boundary safeties, or does one safety align with the star based on path strength? What you got, Pack?
Yeah, they do. They do that with their corners and their safeties. If you watch them this year, Dalen Everett is their boundary corner, and Ja'Cory Thomas or Kyron Jones is their boundary safety. And then KJ Bolden is the field safety, and Ellis Robinson is the field corner. That's something that they have done for a while now. Last year, Malachi Starks was the field safety, or what they call the strong safety. And then Dan Jackson would line up into the boundary as the weak safety, or the free safety, as some people would call it.
Perfectly said, man. Is there any, split safety coverages that you think Texas will run more of than others? Will we have cover, will we have maybe quarters on one side with cover two on the other, or what are some of the combos that you think Muschamp and Texas roll out?
Yeah, so I think the important thing to know in terms of what they do out of Mint is Mint's not really a true split safety defense in terms of when you see a team run what's known as Mint 4 mod, where they're running what is base quarters to both sides. All of the Mint coverages run the same thing to both sides. It's really it's in terms of when you see true split safety, it's a lot more out of 4 down, where you see an even front or you see a heads front. That's where you might see mod to once where you might see mod to one side, and then you might see cut to the other side, right? So it's a little bit more of in 4 down, they'll fluctuate in terms of what they'll run to both sides, but they can run bracket to one side, and then they can run cut to the other, or they can run mix to the other, or they can run some coverage to one side and another to the field and another to the boundary. When they're in Mint, it's pretty much the same coverage to both sides. You go and watch them this year when they're in Mint. It's a lot of Mint 4 mod and a lot of Mint 4 Vice. And Mint 4 Vice is just what some people know as 2 read. Excuse me. It's what some people know as 2 read. That's just the corners reading 2. If 2 is out, the corner has all of 2. The safety is reading 2 to 1. If 2 is vertical, the safety buys that. He has all of 2. If 2 is shallow, then the safety has all of 1. The overhang only has 2 in. He's basically playing the seam to the curl. He's not going to trap all the way out to the flat. So that's what 2 read is, and that's what you'll see a lot of. You'll see a lot of 2 read, and you'll see a lot of mod. You won't see a whole lot of bracket, I don't think. Just in general, when you watch Georgia the last 3 years, they've kind of gone away from bracket. They've gone away from switch. They've really gone away from a lot of the more man match heavy concepts, because when they're in 4 down, you really don't see them run a whole lot of cover 7. You see them run a lot more cover 3. You'll see them work a lot more buzz rotation stuff. So really, I think the main concepts you're going to see out of Texas next year is a lot of Mint 4 mod and a lot of Mint 4 Vice. And then if Muschamp brings the heads front over and he studies from what Ron Roberts did over at Florida last year, that's when you could see a little bit more of bracket come in, where you could see switch come in more. And that's all generally on 1st and 2nd down. On 3rd down, all of that goes out the window, because they will almost exclusively play 4 down, because it's just a lot easier to rush the passer from 4 down, because you don't have 4 eyes who have to work outside and then come back inside if they want to rush the passer. You've got 2 edges who can rush the passer from outside. So you'll see them on 3rd down run a lot more true split safety stuff. And even the split safety stuff that they'll run, it's actually forms of cover 2, where it's 2-man, or what some people know as 2-man under cover 5. So that's man match halves rather than man match quarters. You'll see that a lot more on 3rd down. And if you check out a tweet that I put out a few days ago, you'll see that there's a clip that I posted where Georgia's running clip, and that's a form of cover 5. And all cover 5 is it's man coverage with 2 deep safeties, and everyone's playing inside and in the trail, and the corner is not playing the receiver all the way down the field. He's only doing it through what's known as a move zone. So that's about 15 yards down the field. So on 3rd down, you'll see a lot of cover 5, a lot of 2-man. First and second down, you'll see in terms of split safety, a lot of mid-4 mod if you do see split safety, unless Muschamp's going to do some stuff in terms of with 4 down, figuring out ways to change up the way the run fits work in order to play stuff like bracket or switch or some of the more man match heavy concepts.
Well, you talked about the hedge front, and if he were to bring that over, walk us through the hedge front, my man.
Yeah. So a heads front it functions the same way as a mint front, but in terms of even. So what you have is you have two techniques. So that means both of the 3 techniques or the 2i, they're now head up on the guard. So they're playing screw to screw, helmet to helmet. They're doing what's known as 2 gapping. So they're playing react to attack. So if a guard works to his right, he's mirroring the footwork. And then in terms of hand placement, he's going right underneath both armpits with a neutral grip, right? So he's holding him like that. And then he's fitting primary to secondary gap, where dependent on where the ball goes, he'll fit either if flow is to the right, he'll fit whatever gaps to his right as his primary, and he'll rock back into the gap to his left as a secondary. And if the ball works to the left, he'll fit the A gap primarily, and he'll rip back into the B gap once the ball ends up falling back. So what a heads front does, and the reason why it's an easier way to play split safety, is in an over front, the ball declares a lot easier for the back because you already have a 3 technique, you already have a 2i, you know what gaps are open. In a heads front, you don't know if the 2 techniques are going to work into an over front where you now have a 3 technique and a 2i. You don't know if they're both going to widen out and it's going to become a double 3 technique. You don't know if they're both going to pinch inside and now it becomes a double G, or both of them are in the 2i's. So the back's path is not as clear pre-snap. You make them have to think a little bit more. You force the play to slow down because the path isn't as defined, and it changes how teams have to block it, where the center doesn't know, because typically what you're going to see is the center will work to the 2i if they're running it to that side. Otherwise, he'll work up to a linebacker. Now, without a 2i, when it's double 2s, you change up the way that the path works for the center. You create indecision, and it allows your linebackers to, again, play slower. But because you're in 4 down, both of your edges are protected. You don't have an open C gap, so you don't have to worry about taking someone and having them fit C. You can now play true split safety, and you can play man coverage behind it, knowing that you can box everything and keep everything inside of your 6 or 5 or 7-man box.
Really well said and really well broken down, my man. I mean, we talk about it all the time, muddying the reeds and muddying the waters for a quarterback. And you can absolutely do the same for an offensive line and, of course, for a running back as well. And just making, a little bit of hesitation. He who hesitates is lost. It goes a long way for a defense. But let's talk about the flip side. How did Lane attack a Georgia style, Saban style of Kirby Smart defense? But he's part of that tree. What weakness did he find? But let's go a little bit deeper than that. How would you attack a Will Muschamp, a Saban-style defense? I guess I'm asking you a little bit more broadly since we haven't seen Muschamp in action in a little while. But yeah, what kind of weaknesses, what negatives do you think there are to the scheme in the system? And then if you want to dive in on what Lane and Ole Miss did in particular, then feel free to have at it.
Yeah, so I'll start with what Kiffin did because I think it plays in to what the general weaknesses are. So what you saw a lot from Georgia on first down, and what helped Ole Miss so much was on first and second down, Georgia played a lot of off coverage. If you watch where their corners were, they played a lot of 6 and 7 yard. They played 6 and 7 yards off the ball. And so Ole Miss is a team that runs a lot of RPO sticks and a lot of RPO hitches with their number 1 receiver to the field. If you watch them against Tulane, or you watch them against Mississippi State, or you watch them in any given game, on first down, and on at least 5 first downs, you'll see them run what's known as power pass, where they pull a tackle or they pull a guard, and they then run an RPO hitch off the backside of that. And so what ends up happening is when you play off coverage and when you play cover 3, the way Georgia did a lot, and they did it from off, your corner ends up working to be about 10 yards off the ball by the time the ball's thrown. And like Texas saw all year, when you do that, that's a free access throw. They're going to complete it every time. So Ole Miss was able to stay ahead of the chains because they hit a lot of hitch routes on first down. They got to a lot of 2nd and 3s. And then the second thing was they did a lot of things with their tight end in terms of They put him on the ball, so they lined him up right next to the tackle, and then they released him on drag routes off of play action. They ran what's known as split zone to a side, and then they released the tight end. They got into some RPO slide game where the Y was off the ball and he's working across the middle of the field. They show inside zone away from where the Y was, and then the Y releases and you can dump it off him in the flat. So they did a lot of things in terms of attacking the leverage of the Georgia linebackers. The other thing I would say is in that game, and I think you're going to see this on the 31st, Georgia was really simple in that game on first and second down. Ghost remembers this. I told John before the Texas game, Georgia had really become a lot more complex schematically within the 2 weeks before that. They were not very complex in that game against Ole Miss. It was a lot of cover three and a lot of min four mod. They didn't have a whole lot of complexity in terms of what they were doing. Whereas now you don't really see that. There's a lot more when you watch them against Alabama. It's a lot more of what you expect from a typical Saban defense, from what you expect from a Schumann defense, from a smart defense, where they're running a lot of different concepts. There's not one thing you can point out where they're running repetitively. Whereas when you watch that Ole Miss game, you can see they're running 1 or 2 coverages on every first down. They're almost always running mint 4 mod, or they're running some form of mint 3 or mint 6, where they're either running weak rotation or strong rotation cover 3. That's not as much of a thing anymore. Now, Muschamp, in terms of what he did at Georgia, he was in charge of the simplification of the defense there. So he didn't add complexity to it. He removed some of the complexity to it. So to me, that would be something that I watch for in terms of how do you attack a Muschamp defense. If the Muschamp defense looks like it did, is what Georgia was running against Ole Miss, it's pretty simple. You take the hitches on first and second down, and then you put their linebackers in conflict by running a lot of what's known as fast threes, where you take the back and you fast release him. You take him out of the core immediately. You make him look like he's a part of the route concept. You don't keep him in protection. Because what that'll do is when they're in cover 3, no, Bobby, it doesn't, but I'll explain that in a second. So when they're in cover 3, what happens is if there's a fast 3 or if there's an under route, everything automatically checks into what's known as area calls. So they're now just playing country cover 3. They're playing spot drop. Whereas when they're initially in cover 3 versus 2 open sets, they play what's known as rip liz, which is 3 match. Mm-hmm. So the star is matching 2 out and up. That doesn't happen if there's a fast 3. That kills rip liz. It's now country cover 3. So you saw them do a lot of that. You saw the backs. You saw this fast motion give Georgia a lot of problems in the first game. That to me is generally how, when you watch Saban teams face each other, when you watch Georgia play Alabama a couple of years ago, when you watched Tennessee with Pruitt play Georgia or any one of those, the overwhelming thing that you notice in terms of what they're doing from a route concept perspective is they're running a lot of fast threes. They're running a lot of things to get guys into just true zone coverage. And then because they know how to manipulate the rules of the coverage, because they teach it, they are now able to those weaknesses. And so that's how it starts. I would run a lot of fast threes if I wanted to attack Muschamp. And then I would dial up a ton of cover 3 beaters. That would be my immediate response, because the thing you'll notice about everyone in this family and everyone who's ever learned from people in this family is they want to be middle of the field closed. And the reason is, if you can cover someone being middle of the field closed, if I can play cover 1 or cover 3 and take away your pass game and still be able to play with 1 high safety, which means I can devote as many people as I want into the run game, you're not going to beat me, right? You're just not, because I'm going to be able to stop the run and I can guard you. You're not going to have any ability to consistently move the ball on me. Whereas when you're in too high, you open yourself up to the ability to teams being able to run the ball on you. And that's why you see too high be more of a response than a default for a lot of the Saban guys. So to me, I think the one thing you have to be able to do is you got to be able to run the ball, or you got to be able to change the counts. If your quarterback's in the run game, that helps a ton. That's really, really important, because that will force them to be exclusively single high. And if you can force them to be exclusively single high, you can now whip up some cover 1 and some cover 3 beaters, and you'll have a lot more success. So super long-winded answer to how Lane found success and how you generally find success. But the answer is get them into single high, and then from there, it's fairly easy. You just get all your cover 1 and your cover 3 beaters.
Well said, my man. And you referenced middle field close, and that's what everyone in this family wants to be. I mean, that's something that Will Muschamp was pretty elite at in his time with LSU and then Texas. Really, really good, and again, we've seen that out of anybody in that tree. And so that's something that we had to get the opposite side. We said a lot of really good things about this defense over the last couple of weeks, but I definitely wanted your opinion on, how you would attack it. And then maybe some of the things you're looking out for to make sure that, hey, this is going to work. Okay. As long as I'm not seeing these things, you talk about the simplification that he was brought in to kind of bring in to what Georgia was doing this year, and just touching on the Ole Miss thing. Yeah. I mean, Georgia was so simple in comparison to what they normally look like and to their standard. And then, when you saw them against Texas, you saw them against Bama the second time here late in the year. Obviously, the complexity of that defense is a whole different world. And again, when you have that much youth in the secondary, that definitely makes sense. And so, Pack answered last week and said, it's a situation where you can see a similar thing with Texas next year as they're learning the system and teaching these guys all the different rules and the coverages, the schemes, the concepts, because like you said last week, their playbook is as thick and dense as anybody's out there, as they want to have an answer to absolute everything. Guys, it's always fun to have Pack on the show. He's doing a hell of a job breaking down the Will Muschamp defense, and we'll continue to have Pack on here to do so, and we'll continue to peel back layer after layer because there are many of them with a Saban family-led defense there. But yeah, thanks for watching today, guys. Y'all make sure you hop over here and give this video a like. And then again, hop on over to Inside Texas right now, man. Take advantage of the $1 flash sale. You can't beat it. The absolute best, man. You got all the good work from Eric, Justin, Ian, Paul, all the guys. You got your articles from Evan and Nash. Feel like they're almost cooking up something daily. So come over there, join us at Inside Texas right now and be a part of that community, guys. But Pack, thank you for joining me, man. I wish you and yours a Merry Christmas. I wish the same to all you guys viewing out there. Safe travels. Have a good time with family. And yeah, we'll see y'all next time on Inside Texas.
Before we go, I want to answer Bobby's question really quick about the nature of the splits. So Ole Miss doesn't play with super wide splits. If you go watch them, they're fairly neutral. Whereas when you watch a team like Tennessee, you can really see the wide splits. Ole Miss tends to be they're more of a spread-based thing in terms of their splits. It's not super wide. It's not super narrow. It tends to be fairly balanced in terms of their splits. The route concepts are a lot of what you see out of spread teams. It's a lot of spot. It's a lot of spacing. It's a lot of mesh. It's a lot of hawk. It's not really I wouldn't say it's the extreme nature of the splits and route concepts that gave Georgia problems. I would say it's Lane Kiffin. If you go watch what Lane Kiffin does, he'll play about 10 yards off the ball, and he's just staring at the coverage. And with headsets, he's able to tell his quarterback where to throw to, because you just can't disguise stuff from Lane Kiffin. That's part of what makes him so brilliant, is because he has all the answers. His dad was the creator of Tampa 2. He knows defenses. He's coached under Saban. He practiced against the Saban defense every single year. He's practicing against the Saban defense. He was practicing against the Saban defense at Ole Miss when he was facing Pete Golding every day in practice. So that plays a big role. He knows what he's seeing against Georgia. And then the tempo, that doesn't help, because when you're playing tempo, you have a higher bust rate. It's just natural because you're trying to get calls in, you're trying to get lined up, you're trying to think really quick, and stuff just naturally does bust because of that. So it's more Lane Kiffin. It's Trinidad Chambliss's legs. It's bad execution. And then it's just Georgia being not as complex as they normally are. But it's not really anything to do with the splits or the route concepts the way it would be if it was someone like Tennessee.
Yeah, well said there. Big difference in what Tennessee and Josh Heupel are doing than almost everybody. And again, you went on first downs, and that sure makes life easy. And that's what Ole Miss did repetitively in that matchup up until kind of the fourth quarter of that game when Georgia took over a bit. But yeah, Lane Kiffin, man, you just got to tip your cap at times, because, I mean, he is instant offense. He has got a great grasp on what teams are wanting to do and why they're doing it. He understands all the rules. And then, like Pac said, he's great at manipulating those rules and finding free yardage. I mean, you see Lane dial up some some absolute gifts. And so, yeah, I mean, really well said, Bobby. Great question there. We do appreciate you, Robert, Jay Marley, KJ, all you guys that were in the comments tonight. Bring on more questions. Drop them in the comments if you have any more, and Pack and I will address them at a later date, and be happy to do so, guys. But again, thank y'all for watching, and we'll see y'all all next week, I guess, for myself next Wednesday on Inside Texas.